All right. Who have we been learning about the last year and a half? Jace? David, exactly. And what is his job? Somebody raise their hand. What is David's job, Addison? He's the king. Exactly. He's the king. And he's a pretty good king, right? Has he been a pretty good king? Yeah. Kings have what's called advisors, or in these days it would be a prophet. Okay? And this prophet's name is Nathan. Now, Nathan, prophets are advisors, but they also are people who speak truth to power. So if there's, I don't know, if there's something going on where you're lying and stealing and not telling the truth, what a prophet is like, I know you're not telling the truth. Okay, so prophets speak truth. They tell what's true. So Nathan comes to David one day and says, David, I have a story to tell you. David's like, okay. He says there was two men. One man was really rich. I mean, he had lots and lots of money. And with that money came cattle and sheep, thousands, and I didn't draw thousands, but thousands and thousands of cattle. The other man was a poor man. He did not have any money, and he had one little lamb. Now, let me tell you exactly how Nathan describes this. You ready? He says he raised it. This is the poor man. He raised the lamb. It grew up with him with his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. So how many of you guys have ever had a pet before or have a pet? And you love that pet like it's a member of your family, right? So this lamb was super special to the poor man. So Nathan said to David, so one day a traveler came along to the house of the rich man. And in those days, whenever a traveler came through, you would bring them into your home because it was hospitality, and you would feed them. Okay? So instead of the rich man going to his herd of thousands and thousands of sheep and cattle, he went over to the poor man's house, stole the lamb, killed it, cooked it, and gave it to the traveler.
Why so many gaps?
Very appropriate guess. Now, David, we have learned, right? What is David like? David's nice. What else have we learned about David? Raise your hand. Raise your hand, Sari. He's mature. Okay, what else? Will?
He's a king, duh.
He's a king, but what kind of a king is he? Aubrey? Honest.
I think he's pretty nice.
He's good. He's really great, right? What are the things we've learned so far? David takes care of the bad and honors the good, right? Whenever the house of Saul was fighting against his house, did he go and kill and chop people's heads off? No, the enemies did, then he took care of them. He brought the ark of God to worship in the capital city. He took care of all the bad. He took care of Jonathan's, one of his brothers who was lame, right? So David did some awesome things. So how do you think a guy like that would respond to a story like this? Okay, Ruby, what? Say that again? Yes, okay. How do you think a righteous, just king, because the king is the judge of things. They're the ones who decide what's good or what's good and bad. Okay, so how would the judge would respond to this story? Happy?
No.
Angry? Or somewhere in between? How many guys say, he's happy? Oh, that's a great story. I would do that. How many would say, oh, he must be ticked? How many guys say, he's probably like, whatever. Okay, how many guys say angry? Yes, David got angry. He's like, what? Are you kidding me? That person's going to die. Oh, he was so mad. They're going to pay 4 times. Oh, he was yelling. And Nathan's like, Now, Nathan said something that you're probably not expecting. Once David calmed down, Nathan took his finger. Well, we're not sure he took his finger, but I think he took his finger, and he says, David, you're the rich man. Now, Sammy's over there going, wait, what? Sammy's confused right now. She's like, why is David the rich man? Right, Sammy? You're like, wait, what? Sammy's over there like, huh? And then now she's like, huh, why are you talking to me right now? Huh? All right, so, yes, I skipped a story of why Nathan's even you guys ready for the real story now? Yeah. So it was springtime. David was supposed to go to war because that's when kings go to battle. That's their job in the spring. But this time, David decides to stay home. And he sends Joab and his army out. And David's sitting at home with nothing to do. Okay. Now, David's palace was on one of the highest mountains in Jerusalem there. So when he would get out, he could look down and see all the houses and the people. Okay? So one of the days in the springtime, he was out walking around because he's kind of bored, checking things out to make sure everything's okay. Well, that woman is pretty. Dude, hey, he sees a pretty woman. And he's like, man. So he sends one of his attendants and says, hey, can you go find out who that is? And so they did. They came back and said, oh, that's Bathsheba. She's Uriah's wife. Okay. So David's a married man, and Bathsheba is a married woman. And David says, oh, she's married. I can't go on a date with her at all. Oh, he doesn't do that. He says, oh, go get her. We're going to go on a date. And now here's the weird part, Morgan. This is going to be hard. Uriah is one of his best friends. That's even better, right? So Uriah is a special forces kind of army guy who was one of David's mighty men. He battled with him in the wilderness, did all these awesome things. And as soon as he heard that it was Uriah's wife, he should have said, oh, Uriah, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Good, I'm really glad. Boy, she's pretty, but nope, that's Uriah's wife. Did he do that? No. So the attendant, they went out on a date together. Now, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. David's a married man. Bathsheba, married woman. Is it okay for a married man and a married woman, not with their own married person, but with another person that they're not married to, are they allowed to go out on a date? No. Wait. Just want to make sure. Is it okay for two married people, not with their wives or husbands, to go out on a date together? No, it's not okay. Not okay. Just want to make sure. So David and Bathsheba did that. They went on a date together. And that's not good, right? So David is kind of feeling a little guilty, so he sends for Uriah. Uriah's out fighting. And he tells his commander Joab to bring him back, so Uriah comes back. And David wants to try to cover up this whole date thing going on with Bathsheba. So he sends Uriah home to try to make sure that everything's on the up and up and stuff, right? So Uriah, he comes home, he says hi to Uriah, go home, enjoy a couple nights off. And Uriah looks at him and says, no, I can't go home when my brothers are fighting in battle. So an honorable thing among soldiers is you don't go home and play while your brothers in arms are fighting and risking their lives, right? Uriah thought he was coming back for some special orders from the king, not to go hang out with his wife. So Uriah slept at the king's palace so that he wouldn't do a dishonorable thing to his brothers. Well, David was like, well, that's not going to work. So the next night, David and Uriah are talking, hanging out, and David keeps giving him wine, keeps giving him alcohol, and eventually Uriah gets a little inebriated, we call it, or a little 3 sheets to the wind, or a little drunk, right? So David says, Uriah, go home, spend some time with your wife. And Uriah, even though he's drunk, does the honorable thing, and he sleeps at the foot of the palace. And David's like, this is not going to work. So David takes a piece of paper, or whatever they use back there to write on, writes a note to Joab. Joab is the commander. Rolls up this thing, seals it with the king's seal, hands it to who? Uriah. Because Uriah is going back to battle, right? And he's like, bring this to Joab. Good luck in the war, Uriah. So Uriah, okay, sir, goes back, hands the letter to Joab, and Uriah joins his brothers fighting. In the letter, David had wrote to Joab, the next time you're in battle, put Uriah at the front. And when the battle gets really bad and lots of fighting is happening, tell everybody else to pull back, and Uriah is probably going to end up dying. Sydney, you know what's going to happen, right? So Joab has to obey what the king says. So the next time they're in battle, he says, Uriah, I need you to go up to the front. You're going to do the charge. Uriah's like, yes, sir. He goes up to the front of the lines. Battle gets really bad, really bad. Everybody else, Joab tells everybody else to pull back. Uriah doesn't. And what happens? He dies. Miss Paquin's like, what? David ordered the death of who? Now, and he tells Bathsheba that her husband's dead, and she's sad for a little while, and then he marries her. All right, here we go. So, that happened before Nathan told that story. The story that I told you that Nathan shared, Nathan comes to David after all this happened. David thought nobody would ever know. Uriah's dead. They're married. No one knows. It's totally secret, right? David thinks he got away with it, right? No one's going to know. I stole another man's wife and killed her husband. Booyah, right? So Nathan is a prophet of who? Of God, the Lord. The Lord tells Nathan, go tell David this story. So Nathan goes and tells David the story of a rich man with lots of sheep who steals the one precious sheep of a poor man and takes it for himself. Who in the story is David?
The rich man.
Rich man. Who is the poor man?
Nathan.
No.
No.
Uriah. Who is the precious lamb? Chase? Who's the precious lamb? Kendra? Bathsheba. Bathsheba. David stole another man's wife and killed the poor man. And Nathan got to David not by going and saying, God said you stole another man's wife and killed him. And David's like, David, what would have happened? David would have gone, right? When you directly confront something and people aren't ready for it, they will make excuses, they'll lie more. God wanted to get to David's heart, okay? Because what do we know about David? Does he have a good heart or a bad heart? We know David has a good heart, right? David has a great heart. Now, he makes some really bad decisions right now, right? But so God never wants to punish us like, I can't believe Haley did that. Boom! I want to crush her because she's so bad. God isn't up in heaven saying, I can't believe David did that. I'm going to crush him. Boom. Right? No. God is not like that at all. So if you ever think that God is out to get you because you did something wrong, there's adults that will never come to church here or any church. Do you know why? Because they think if they show up in a church The building will fall down on them because they've been so bad. Do they know who God really is? No, because that is the opposite. God does not do that at all. He always goes for our hearts. He cares deeply about us. So God sent Nathan and say, here's how we're going to get at David's heart. Tell him a story, not about what he did, but about what somebody else did that's kind of like what he did, and make David mad about it, just like all of you guys were mad about it. And then when David is confronted with the truth of what he did, do you know what David did? So when Nathan says, you're the rich man, David didn't go, no, I didn't do it. No, I totally didn't do it. It's somebody else. I didn't do it. That person did it. Or they made me do it. Or they brought her to me. They forced me to go on a date with her and then marry her. And I don't know. Did he do that? No. As soon as Nathan said, you're the man. Here, let's get it right. Let me tell you exactly what he did. Okay? David burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. Then Nathan said to David, you are the man. This is what the Lord said. I anointed you king over Israel. You had all this stuff. And here's what David said. I have sinned against the Lord. And then David wrote, and we have it in the Bible, in Psalm chapter 51, here's how David responded. Here's what a man does who has a good heart. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your great compassions. Blot out my sin, wash away all my iniquity, and cleanse me. I know what I did wrong. My sin is always in front of me. Against you and you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. Surely you desire the innermost parts. Create in me a pure heart. Don't cast me from your presence. Restore to me. So David did not make any excuses, did he? He said, oh my goodness, I totally messed up. So God is not in the business of trying to crush us. God's in the business of trying to get our attention so that we can turn to Him. A couple things I want to mention to you, okay? When you're a king or an American citizen, you don't get to do whatever you want. And even if you think nobody saw it, or no one knows about it, or you think you might have got away with it, who knows? God does. And God keeps a record of those things, not to crush you, but to try to pull you back to Him. So when you think you got away with it, your heart is far from God, and God uses people like me or Miss Diane or Mr. Sam or your parents or your teachers or your coaches or your parents' friends or even your friends. Your friends might go, Carly, I saw you, I heard that you did, I just don't think that should be something that you should do. And Carly should say, oh yeah, you're right, instead of nuh-uh, whatever, I'm not doing it, whatever, So what kind of person, how do you respond to those things, right? And if you think you're doing really good, so David was doing really good in the story so far, right? Yes. And then all of a sudden he decided not to go to battle, and he stayed home thinking he was all awesome and kingly, and guess what he did? He got in trouble. Yeah, he did the bad things when he thought he was doing really awesome. So if you're being obedient at home, you're loving your parents, you're loving your brother and sister, you're not mouthing off to the teacher or beating anybody up or bullying anybody at school, you're doing really good, watch out. That's usually when sin is the enemy goes, hey, Wyatt, hey, why don't you try this? You're a pretty good guy. You can mess up every now and then, right? So sometimes we make bad decisions because we think we deserve it or whatever, right? Who is the only honorable man in this story? Don't put Nathan. Nathan's not involved with a man's wife and da-da-da. Sari? Uriah. Uriah was the only honorable man. Now, normally in our stories, who's the honorable man? David takes care of the good, and he takes care of the bad, and he honors the good, right? What does David do in this story? He's the bad one, right? So David is in the other person's spot, and this is not normal. So basically Uriah takes David's spot, and David takes the bad person's spot. Oh my goodness. Who sees all this stuff? God does. Now, no matter if you do good or if you do bad, there's a fancy word you've all probably heard at this point. Consequences. Consequences means, Gage, that if you do good, there are consequences. If you do bad, there are consequences, right? If you do good, if you are Stephanie Galdi, at home, she decides to love her family. She doesn't hate them. When her parents tell her to clean her room, she does it. When her sister or brother, whoever your family members are, decide to bother her, she responds kindly. If her parents ask her to do things, if at school she's obedient, she just is a super nice person. What are the consequences of being a good person? Parents trust her.
Respectful.
She's a respectful kind of person. Teachers trust her. She has a good relationship with her family members. And they have a lot of friends. And when adults can trust you, you usually get special privileges, don't you? Right? Now, let's say Stephanie was on the flip side of that. Every time her parents said to do something, she's like, no, I'm not doing that, whatever. She yelled at him. Every time her sister or brother did something, she'd punch him in the face and kick him and try to get him in trouble. And at school, she's always mouthing off to the teachers, bullying people in the hallway, yelling at Mrs. Lee, all that kind of stuff. Shh. What are the consequences of a person like that?
People will hate you.
People will hate you. They don't trust you. They're worried about you. You go to timeout, you don't get special privileges. You usually get things taken away. So no matter if you do good or bad, there are always consequences. So here are the consequences. Now this is weird. It's hard to know why this happens or why God did it this way. But David and Bathsheba eventually have a child. And after the child, hey guys, Gage, can you sit over there? After that child is born, the child dies. Or got sick, and it died. And that was what God said the consequence was for what David had done, stealing another man's wife and murdering, killing her husband, right? So there are always consequences, good and bad. But who sees it all? God does. And who do we have to answer to? We have to answer to God. And here's the funny thing, guys. All of us are bad. Because the Bible says we've all sinned. We've all messed up. And only by knowing Jesus, Will, can you sit down in your chair, please? Only by knowing Jesus can we become good. We can't be good on our own. Trust me, Haley Wasted has tried. Haley's a great girl. She most of the time makes good decisions, but there's some things at home that she gets in trouble for, I bet. Right, Haley? Yep. See, she's really honest. So even if you're a great person, you still do what? You still do bad. And who do we need to help us with that? Specifically, Jesus Christ. All right, let's pray. Let's pray.